All right, hey everybody. I am sitting here with Brooke Stopnick today, and she's getting ready to go back to school, but I wanted to catch her before she went back to school to talk a little bit about some of her summer missions experiences and just some cool stuff that God's been doing in her heart and life. But Brooke, most people don't know you. Tell them who you are, who you belong to. How long have you been at Journey?
Yeah, my name is Brooke Stopnick. My parents are Kelly and Blair Stopnick. So if you haven't seen me for the past 4 years,
Right.
I have been going to UNC Chapel Hill, but I've been at Journey since I was in kindergarten.
Was that it? Four
Yeah.
and 5 years old?
Yeah, like 5 or 6.
Because Baby Jude, we always remember Baby Jude as the...
because Jude was born in 2008, which is when we started.
Right, yeah, that's exactly right. Oh man, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Baby Jude.
So
sorry, Jude.
A lot.
That's how we knew him for years.
Yeah, 13 years. At Journey.
Yes, 13 years. Awesome.
So practically born and raised.
And they have a divided household, just to let everybody know, because her younger brother, Britton, goes to NC State.
Yeah.
So if you ever see their mom and dad walking around with conflicted hats and T-shirts and all that, it's because they're sharing the love for both of their children at school. What'd you go to school for?
So I came into college wanting to study aerospace engineering.
Yeah.
And so I randomly decided to go to UNC after just praying about it.
Yeah.
And which UNC is not known for aerospace engineering.
Okay.
But I was going to major in math and then go and get a master's in aerospace engineering.
And you were looking at digging at one time, right? Too, like that
Colorado,
was before
Colorado School of Mines.
That was Colorado School of Mining.
But
Yes,
their aerospace program.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep.
So I wanted to.
It didn't matter. Math was it was going to be math.
Yeah,
math was
something
your
math.
strength.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So decided to come to UNC and wanted to do stuff in aerospace engineering. And then I got plugged in with the Summit Church in Raleigh, which I've been going to for the past few years. And
But you got plugged in through their campus ministry,
yes,
right?
through their
Okay,
campus
so
ministry,
you first started going to the campus ministry, and then
the church.
Then the
Yes.
church. Very cool.
So I ended up doing their summer program after my freshman year, which is called City Project. So it's 6 weeks, and the first part you go to a church plant. So I went to Atlanta, Georgia, learning about church planting and stuff like that. And assisting the church plant that the Summit had sent out from there. And then in the middle, we were in Wake Forest at Southeastern Seminary. And we did a lot of like theological teachings, learning about the Bible, learning about a ton of different things, and what God has to say about a lot of cultural things too. And then afterward, I went to New York City.
I do remember New York.
Yes, so I went to New York City
Was that your
for
first
a mission
summer?
trip. Yes, that was after freshman year. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So went to New York City, and we served in a predominantly Muslim community, and literally it was just straight evangelism on the street in New York, which was very crazy. And it felt very third world, which was, we're in New York, and all the signs were in, because it was a Bangladesh community, so all the signs were in their language, and most people like didn't even speak English. I was like, it felt like another country. Yeah. But it was so cool.
I mean, the only difference is you can jump on the subway and go back and then show back up in America. Right, but I understand that completely. All right, so I remember that every year. So you had, so every summer you've done?
No.
Not every summer?
No.
All right, so one summer you did that.
Yes.
What was last summer?
Last summer I studied abroad in Spain.
You studied abroad in Spain, that's right, okay.
Yeah, well, so during City Project, I really felt the Lord, like, breaking down a lot of barriers for career and, like,
so what you went in for,
money.
Right. What you went in for versus what you're going to do.
Yeah. So I remember my senior year, maybe junior year of high school, like sitting down and Googling like top paying jobs for people who are good at math and aerospace.
How can I pay my schooling and how can I?
Aerospace engineering was number one. I was okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
I like space.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'll do that. And I really felt the Lord just like completely like breaking those down and calling me to like open my hands. And such an answered prayer. But when I got back, so my scholarship was tied to specific degrees. So it was tied to physics or computer science or an engineering degree. I got a C in my first computer science class, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. This is like Comp
this may not be what I want to do. Yeah.
And I was freaking out. And then that like I re-looked at the site when I got back from City Project, and they had changed and added math as a major. That's allowed.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, Lord, like I'm changing my major right now.
I'm just going to be math,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and you're going to teach math, right?
Yes.
That's what you've decided.
Yeah. So my idea was, okay, I really love teaching, but
Yeah.
I have to major in math. So I'm like, I can work at So I was like, my options are I could work at a private school with a math degree, but I can't work at a public school because I don't have that certificate.
Right.
Well, I have been on top of UNC discontinued this program a couple years ago for teaching, where you have a STEM major, and then you do a couple classes and student teach, and you get certified.
And you
to
still
teach
get
public
your
school.
certified.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it was discontinued a couple years ago, and I was like, I kept emailing, when's it going to open up? When's it going to open up? When's it going to open
Probably
up?
after COVID.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess it shut down.
Man.
But they opened it this year, so I will be the first class to graduate
Because
with
of your
this
math
degree,
major.
Because of my math major, so I will be student teaching this year,
Right.
And I will come out with a math major and this education program.
Yeah.
And the first year that they do it, like the Lord has just opened so many doors for this too, like for me to have a certification.
And teaching math doesn't come up when you Google what's the highest priced job
Yes.
to do that. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've seen the shift there, and a lot of that had to do with going to school, getting your C in your in your class.
Yeah.
And then I know that you, because of the overseas travel and because of City Project, God's been kind of also shaping and moving a little bit, not just career stuff, but what do you want to do missionally? Like, how do you want to serve Him?
Yeah.
Use your gifts and talents and serve Him. So this past year, which is what I really wanted people to hear, talk a little bit about where you went and what you did, and then I want to hear about what you learned.
Yeah.
All right. So where'd you go?
So this past summer, I went to a country in Southeast Asia, and I spent 6 weeks there with the Summit Church. So they have the two programs I did, City Project, and then after you finish City Project, you can go to Second City, which is overseas for the whole summer. So I went over there and for 6 weeks, and with a small team, there were 8 of us.
Yep.
And we just spent all summer with the field partners, so missionaries that have lived in Indonesia for 6 years that were sent from the Summit Church in Raleigh. So I spent a lot.
So to go support them.
Yes, to go to support them in their
Gotcha.
mission there.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now there's only 3 missionaries in the whole city.
Wow.
And,
Where you were.
Where
Okay,
I was.
gotcha.
Yeah. So it's very like they need help, they need support,
Sure.
and reaching out to people.
Primarily was what religion?
Yes. So the country that we were in was very Muslim. So the entire country actually is a Muslim
The whole
country.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Gotcha.
It's not illegal to be Christian, but there is one tribe that is Christian in that country. So there are like some Christian influences, but there's a lot of Catholic influences and a lot of people who don't actually have an understanding of the gospel or a relationship with
So
God.
the Western influence, Christian-wise, would probably be more Catholic in there, and it's root. Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha. And because I know we talked about it. There's also original tribal stuff there too, kind of mixing in.
Yeah. So it was a lot of like Muslim mixed in with like animism. So a lot of like people like communicating with spirits and like inviting spirits in for protection and like going to witch doctors to heal and stuff like that. So it's very much a mix. So it's very different from like
I'm about to say very different than what even New York Muslims or where you went to. It's got its own unique flavor there too. All right, so you went over to support. What are some of the active things you and your team did while you were there?
Yeah, so a lot of it, they kind of described like us going as being like the sifters of the missionaries can't always like meet a ton of people and share with a ton of people. But we know that like God's preparing hearts for people to know Him. So we're going there and we are sharing the gospel with a ton of people around. We are just evangelizing, making friends, trying to read the Bible with people. And we kind of sift through like who is spiritually interested and who is not. So, and then move like the spiritually interested people toward the field partners to build long-term relationships.
Man, that's good.
So,
hold on, I'm sorry. Okay, because this is really big. I know for a lot of people that struggle with sharing their faith, they look at something like what you went and did and it was like, I could never do that, go to another country, share. And it's like, there's a process to this. I know in the States we've called it many things, relational evangelism and those kind of things. But it is a big deal to talk about the role of inviting in relationship and finding out who's interested.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, God's already doing maybe a work.
Yeah.
It's not like you're trying to convince people or debate Muslim beliefs or things like that. Like you really do want to see. And I think I remember you saying one of the things you loved was that it was just like, do you want to read the Bible together? And the fact that there were people that were like, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about some of those experiences when you just invited them to do something as simple as meet up at coffee and read scripture.
Yeah. So it was just crazy, like some of the experiences.
Yeah.
Like one of the girls, I didn't personally read with her. Some other girls on my team did. But they shared the gospel with her, and she was like, I have been looking for someone to tell me about Jesus.
Wow.
She was like, I'm Muslim. My boyfriend is Catholic. And she's like, I've been asking him questions and he can't answer them. And she's like, why? Like, he's Christian. Why can't he answer these questions? Like, I want to know about Jesus.
Right.
And we were like, no way. Like,
we
just met you and you're like, I want to know about Jesus and no one's telling me about it.
I've been asking about this. Yeah. I've been curious about this. And you're like, okay, God, we can do that. That's so cool.
So it was so crazy. And we met up, well, I didn't, but some of the girls on my team met up with her, read the Bible with her multiple times, connected her with some of the field partners, the long-term partners, and continue reading with her, sharing with her. She hasn't made a decision to follow Christ yet, but she's in community. She's going to Bible study every week. She's meeting with people.
That's awesome.
She's learning more about Jesus.
Yeah.
And we know like that the Lord is working in her life, and He's faithful to.
She's investigating. She's at least open to hearing.
Oh yeah.
She's not antagonistic or agnostic about it. She's very open to the presentation of it. Like you said, it may not be. I'm going to cross the line today.
Yeah.
But then, of course, and I think one thing too to let people know is church there is very different than church. The way we experience it.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit because it's more home church based, right? So talk a little bit about how they do church.
Yeah.
Because you are kind of connecting them to the local church, but it still looks different.
Yeah. So there are a couple different things that they do.
Okay.
So on Friday nights, they have like a young adults thing that completely was started by some of the young believers there, and they just host people in their homes. I love that every church service is so full of food.
Yeah,
like,
so it's just like dinner. It's just like, come on over.
It's not necessarily dinner, but it's like a million snacks, and you will be like,
that's awesome.
You'll be like reading or worshiping or something, and someone will pass you a plate of watermelon, like your eyes will be closed worshiping.
Yeah,
and
right.
Then you'll like receive a plate of watermelon.
Oh, thank you.
And you're like, oh, okay. And it just like everyone passing like food and
just
snacks
passing
and
food
stuff
around. Yeah, that's so fun.
And
we should do that here more. We should do that on Sunday morning. Just snacks everywhere. That's good.
So funny.
So that's a lot more home church feel, right?
Yeah. So on Sundays they also meet, and I'd say there's probably like 30 people in the local church.
Yeah.
And they're actually starting a process of multiplying, which is super awesome because they're like too many people to fit in a living room right now.
That's true. Yeah, and you would need multiple kind of like home pastors to facilitate that, which is really cool.
One of the local believers is in seminary right now.
Yeah.
And one of the other local believers is talking to the field partner about wanting to go to seminary, which is super awesome to have like local Southeast Asians then leading the church.
Yeah.
Because right now it is an American, which is a good way to start.
Correct.
But
it's not what you want to see.
Yeah,
correct.
passing it off so that the Southeast Asians can run like their own church. So they're splitting into two right now, where they're doing 1 week together and then 1 week separated.
Yeah.
So they also can reach different parts of the city because one is more north, one house, and one house is more south.
Gotcha.
So it's easier to invite someone in if it's closer to their home.
Gotcha.
So they're still having community together, but they are having a lot of people, so they're starting to multiply. And their dream is to have 21 churches in the city.
21 churches in the city, which is so good.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Which is super awesome.
So I know that you went over there. I mean, you learned a lot too, right? Like part of the conversations you were having with folks was, and I want you to kind of speak into that. Like, it wasn't just you bringing your message.
Yeah.
It was like you went into it with tell me a little bit about how you grew up. Tell me a little bit about, because I know, like you said, the Muslim faith practice there is different.
Yes.
I mean, I hate to say different. There's a nuance to the fact that they're mixed in with all these other things.
Yeah.
So tell me some of the things you learned that was just eye-opening for you when you went. That was probably not what you expected.
Yeah.
I know, for instance, just one thing I'll mention. When we talked, you talked about them wearing their, and that some things with school, with their college, and their men can go to temple, but women do not. Like that was something interesting to me. Like it was kind of like, I mean, again, you can get that in the Mid East or whatever. You can expect a little bit of that. Yeah. But then you start going like, well, that's interesting, and they're starting to do more with that too. I just found that a little bit interesting. But you know, speaking a little bit of that, what you learned about their schooling process and how those young people really are kind of like starving for the next thing. Yeah.
So a lot of the women there, it was a very different ministry what we did, what the girls did on the team versus what the guys did on the team.
Oh, that's right.
Because a lot of the women would like have no idea about their own religion. So they don't know a lot of the practices. Well, they know the practices, but they don't know like how to really read. Like,
so they're culturally Muslim.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And they would say they're religiously Muslim.
Right.
But there's no heart like for it.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so the Quran has to be read in Arabic.
Okay.
And no one speaks Arabic there because it's not their language. But they believe that like this is the holy word of Allah and like it cannot be translated. So most people haven't read their own book because they don't know how to read it in their language. They're what are they called? Imams, the Muslim leaders and teachers. They preach in Arabic, so no one really understands. They go to the mosque.
So they don't even translate it when
they don't even translate it because it's in like they're reading from the Quran.
Okay.
So men go to when they're younger school for Arabic.
Okay.
They learn it when they're younger, but women do not. So the men know a little bit, but they don't necessarily know enough to fully read their book.
Sure.
Because if your kids take Spanish class and you're expecting them to read the Bible translated in Spanish.
Correct. Yeah, it'd be like, no, that's not going to happen. Right.
Spanish, like it's not.
Might catch a word or two.
Yeah, but it's not going to be full.
Okay, that
especially
makes sense.
an entirely different script too.
Yeah.
So it's very different. Their prayers that they repeat. So they pray 5 times a day.
Yep.
You hear the call to prayer go off at 4 a.m. and throughout the day until 7 p.m. And you just, the Muslims go to the mosque and pray, and they repeat the prayers in Arabic, and they don't even have like a personal prayer time. Like at the end, there is a personal prayer time, but after talking to a lot of people, it's like, they say that sometimes it's selfish to pray for yourself during that time because you've already prayed for yourself in the other times. So a lot of people don't participate in the personal prayer time.
Interesting. Yeah.
So people feel like they don't like have a relationship.
I must say, so it's not very personal at all, especially for the women.
Yeah.
So you were bringing in relationship, you were bringing in opportunity to learn something that they didn't know.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if it was like, well, we can't answer that much about the Quran, but why don't you tell me about the Bible?
It was super cool because I didn't know a lot about the Quran either going there, and then we learned like a little bit about it to be able to have conversations. And so we had like conversations about like I learned how to say like Adam and Hawa instead of Adam and Eve. And I would be like, oh well, you know the story about Adam and Hawa? Like it's a very popular story.
Yeah, very popular story.
No, they would be like, no, I don't know that one. I'm
wow.
Like,
in their Quran.
In their Quran, they don't know it. I'm like, that is one of the most simple like stories for them to
God created.
Know. Yes. And they did not know it.
Wow.
So it was crazy even just having conversations like that.
Yeah.
And people had never heard the Bible, like read the Bible before, seen the Bible. One of the girls we got to share with that was saved had never seen the Bible before. And we simply just were like, hey, do you want to read it? Like you've never read it before. And she was so down. So it was so cool.
I just think I find it interesting, especially the approach of the people that were working with you. Like, there is something that when you ask people about their culture and about even their religion, it's not that you're not going to share your faith, but it's a respectful thing.
Yeah.
So when Peter says, be ready to share the hope you have with others, but be respectful. I think asking people about it is like, hey, why do you do that? What happens when then they're like, well, we don't really do the personal prayer time, and then you can talk about your religion and your faith. Yeah, it's not a selfish thing.
Yeah,
to come because of the relationship that you get to have.
Yeah.
Well, were you nervous to, I mean, I know you had other experiences in the States and other things. Were you nervous to share the gospel in a language that you didn't know real well? Or like you said, kind of like, how do I make this as easy as possible? Did they help you work through that? Or what were some of the things you were feeling?
Yeah. So coming into it, I was really nervous because I think I was very used. So I lead camp evangelism on UNC's campus.
Okay.
And now I'm like, it's kind of crazy, and I'm so on fire for
Yeah.
Muslims now. But we would just go around and share with people, and I would never approach someone if they had a hijab on.
Right.
Because I was like, oh, they're so bought into their culture, they're so bought into their religion.
Sure.
Like, I'm not going to talk with them, not even trusting the Lord to move in their hearts.
Yeah, just like, they're not open to it.
Yeah. And the Lord really revealed to me the lack of trust in Him to be moving in these people. And how I was just profiling people so quickly by seeing hijabs.
Gotcha.
And I remember one of the guy that co-led with me for evangelism, he would always say, like, we are not going out to be lawyers for Christ, we are going out to be witnesses for Christ.
That's good.
And I think that is something that really has changed my view of evangelism, because I mean, even seeing like street preachers yelling and like people who are so like apologetics is great. It's great to know it. But just screaming apologetics in microphones on campus really is.
Or to fish for the debate, or to
like
to
the
think
debate
you're
is
going to
not
argue
going to win
yourself to it.
people
Right.
over.
Correct.
So I really have learned, like, it is truly like our witness.
Yeah.
And I think that was so true in Indonesia.
Yeah.
In Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia.
Because it was because it was cool seeing like how the Lord brought so many opportunities for me to share like my own struggles. Like I would meet someone and be like, like I have really struggled with that, and the Lord like changed this, or the Lord brings me comfort even though I struggle with this sin. Or things like that. It was really cool how the Lord like allowed me to be such a witness to Him, and that's what we're called to do, is just be witnesses. It's
you sharing your story, not you sharing necessarily what their story needs to be. It's like I'm going to witness my story. And invite them into that conversation. I will say, let's pause real quick. I know I like these teaching moments. So, like you said, you don't have to be on a college campus to profile somebody. I mean, we do that all the time. Right? We go to work, and we're like, Susie she's not interested. Bob isn't, interested. Like we do that all the time, right? Yeah, I've seen what they do, or what they post on Facebook. They're not, So that's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because even for us, we don't probably know we do it as clearly as you would. Oh my gosh, I totally do that. We probably don't know we do it, but we definitely do it. And so, I mean, obviously praying beforehand. Who are you leading me to today? What are you? You don't know. We what do we say at Journey? Like, you don't say your no for somebody, right? Like you don't want to say your no for somebody. Like you don't want to sit there and say, hey, you might not be interested in it, but and I know that not everybody you interacted with was like, let's go talk. You experienced just as much cold shoulder as you would expect. I mean, obviously we love to share the aha moments and the stories of like somebody gets it, but it doesn't change the fact that you can go out and people will be like, don't bring that Bible near me. Don't, but that's just a part of, again, being kind of having your heart soft enough, but your skin thick enough, like heart soft enough to continue to pray that God would bring the right people, thick skin a little bit enough to that those rejection things aren't going to like throw your day, and you're going to, I can't do this, whatever the case is. I don't know, you shared exciting news. I don't know if you want to share it today or not.
Wait, well, one thing.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I will say, like, one verse that's really encouraged me in evangelism is I think it's in Galatians. Don't correct me, but I am not trying to please people. But God, if I were trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. I would not
be doing this now. Correct.
And I think that so often we are trying to please people, of like trying to keep the peace or these things, and that. Like, if I were trying to please people, I wouldn't be a servant of Christ. Like, I am here to share Christ, make Christ known, and that is why we are here. We are called to the Great Commission: go and make disciples of all nations.
That's right.
And that is our main mission as Christians, is to seek and see where God's moving, and He is seeking and saving the lost, and we get to join Him in that.
Correct.
And I mean, that's the most important thing.
Movement.
Yeah, it's His movement.
And
we get
we
to join
are
in.
just a part of what He's doing.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
And I think that's really good to continue to highlight is that, even when we're engaging in a conversation with somebody, God's already.
Yeah.
That's what the Holy Spirit does.
Yeah.
He's at work in hearts.
Yeah.
Just the same thing. You're not going to convince someone to faith as much as it is that you're going to plant those seeds, maybe water it, maybe add some encouragement or some, like you said, just your personal story and witness might open a door. But we know it's the Holy Spirit that transforms. Like that's it. The Holy Spirit's the one who does the work. He transforms. Yeah. But we do get this really cool part of it to be a part of it. All right, two things I want us to end with. One is just for our folks, so you could just say it. You've had some really cool local, statewide experiences with Second City. You've had your global experiences, whether studying abroad or going to be a part of this. You went to mission trips with Journey and other things like that. What is the value for people to sort of get out of their comfort zone? Doesn't matter whether it's New York City and in that area you went to, or if it's truly in Southeast Asia. What's the benefit that you see for people to get out of their comfort zone and to be challenged to just share their life with people, just share their faith? Yeah,
I think that God moves so much when you are out of your comfort zone. Like it is when you are comfortable in your comfort zone that you're the enemy starts taking slowly revealing feeding you lies.
Yeah.
Of oh well, I really wanted to use this money instead of going on a mission trip for my family vacation.
Right.
I, as a good parent, should be spending time with my children, or things like that.
We can convince ourselves
those
of anything.
Those are good things. Yeah, we can convince ourselves of anything. But when you are truly pushed out of your comfort zone, it is a leap of faith. God grows you so much, and even just having a space where you can be still before the Lord. Something that the Lord really a verse He was really putting on my heart was be still and know that I am God.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that the Lord really showed me this summer, of just having a space where, which it makes me really sad now being back, of how how different it is in my normal life. But that's okay, because it's, you have camp highs, but that doesn't mean you don't go to camp. You have missional highs. That doesn't mean you don't not go on a mission trip.
Yes.
But also trying to bring those things into your regular life. But I was just so shocked how every day, my thoughts stayed on God. The verse that Paul says about being always in prayer. Steadfast
always in prayer. Yeah.
And I think that's something I truly experienced. I woke up and God was on my mind throughout the entire day. I was praying for people. I was praying the Lord would open doors, lead me to people, sustain me. It's super hot. I'm Lord, would you bring a cloud?
You're wearing everything. You're
yeah. So Lord, would you bring a cloud? It was really cool of seeing how much I sought God while I was there.
Yeah.
In an everyday thing, and that's something I want to bring back. The Lord uses these hard, uncomfortable situations to just strip you down to who you are, to reveal sin, to reveal lies that the enemy is feeding you, and to just show you who He is. Be still and know that I am God, that He's in control, to know who He is, to meditate on who He is, and to be constantly in prayer and communion with the Father.
Well, I don't remember if it's the NASB, but my favorite, translation of that, one says, cease striving. And it's one that I've always kept in my head because, be still is, when you start really getting down to that, you're just what am I always striving to do?
Yeah.
Well, we're always striving for the next thing or the next thing. And being still is really about being present.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you, like you said, you put yourself in a position where you have no choice but to just be present.
Yeah.
You can't force anything. You can't. And so that's, I've actually, I've probably been to now about 6 short-term experiences, not including some of the stuff we've done with Cyprus and teaching other pastors, but even for me, quote unquote, the pastor, I love being gone. I love stripping away the distractions of everyday life and being able to just be present in the moment. And yes, you can be more uncomfortable than in certain situations than others, but at the same time, there's so much value in what God's doing in the midst of that present, stillness, trusting in Him, leaning on Him. I love it. Okay, I want you to share a little bit about So this is your last year of school. All right. She's going to be Teacher Brooke. Teacher Brooke is going to be is coming up. It's coming up at some point. But you have, because of your experience, you have decided that you'd like to go back.
Yeah.
Right. So tell everybody a little bit about it.
Yeah. So my church is the Summit Church that I attend in while I'm in Chapel Hill, and they are a Southern Baptist church, and so they have their International Missions Board, and they send missionaries all over the world. And I am in the application process of doing a 2-year term hopefully back in Southeast Asia, applying for that one. Yeah. Just kind of continuing what I was doing there of evangelism, of continuing to build relationships with the local believers, the local church, non-believers there, and just sharing Christ's love and who he is and the gospel with people who have never heard the gospel before.
So what does it look like for you? You know, that you're back, and how can you encourage others as they just want to share their faith here at home?
Yeah.
You know, versus just, well, I got to go to Peru, I got to go to Southeast Asia.
Yeah. I think like being in Southeast Asia, I saw so many people like who had never heard the gospel before, but there are so many people here in America who have never heard the gospel before.
And we don't assume
we
that.
don't assume that. We're
Correct.
like, oh, well, this person knows I'm Christian because I have the verse in my bio, and that's my evangelism for the year.
Right.
You know, and things like that you're like, oh, well, I see they wear a cross necklace and they must know who Jesus is.
Yeah.
Like things like that. And even on like UNC's campus, like I talked with a guy who I was sharing about Jesus and how he rose from the dead, and he was like, wait, Jesus rose from the dead?
Right.
He was like, everyone wears crosses. I thought he just died. And I was like, that is an important part of the story.
Like the crucifixes. They're like, I've seen Jesus die.
The crosses everywhere. He's like, Jesus died, but I never heard him having risen from the dead.
Right.
And so just things like that and I have shared with so many people who are wearing cross necklaces or cross tattoos, and I'll like ask them questions. They're like, oh, well, it represents my grandma, or things like that.
Right.
That like a lot of people, I think we are like, oh, they're Christian. They already know like who Jesus is. And one thing that we do, I'm gonna grab my phone, is we have the three circles that we use a lot like on campus.
Okay, so you're using that basically to help people
to like share,
connect the dots.
To share the gospel. And even people who are like, oh yeah, like I'm Christian, and oftentimes I don't just allow them to leave it there because it could be very cultural.
Oh yeah.
And
they don't know what that means.
Yeah, they don't know what that means. They just knew that they show up at a church on Easter or Christmas, and that they know who Jesus is. And so sharing the gospel, like I would be bold to just be like, oh, that's awesome. Like, can I tell you like what Christianity means to me, and like see if they're open to that. And I think just like keep pushing in and keep asking questions. And I think we should be a lot more bold to share the gospel quicker instead of, because it can be easy to sharing our testimony and stuff like that, or I went to church, and like those things are great to share, but I think also like we need to be sharing the gospel with people, because the gospel like has power to change lives, and the spirit, you have the Spirit in you, and the Spirit can give you the words to speak, and we don't need to be nervous for it. And being quick to share the gospel. And I always ask people like, have you heard that before? Or like, what is new about that you haven't heard? And a lot of times people will be like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, I had never heard that before. And it's like, oh, that's a pretty important part. Like, what do you think of that? Like, is there anything that you would like, would you like to read the Bible with me? I think that's such an easy thing for people who are like, who claim to be believers. Is like, that's so awesome. Would you like to read the Bible with me? Because a lot of people people that may have had church hurt or things like that can be very resistant to coming to church, being invited to church. But I think that something
But they might be open to reading John with you or something.
I think something that I've learned is that like you like have like you share the gospel on Sundays, but like it is so much more like if you're just bringing people into church and like hoping that you are going to be on stage sharing the gospel with them and that they're going to come to Christ in this auditorium, like it is, I think, more important and more impactful to be relationally walking side by side with them, of inviting them into your home to have dinner and read the Bible together. Like I think that is going to go so much further, because that's what the Acts Church did. They didn't have this huge building and hoping that people would be coming in and sharing. And
it was always in their wherever they worked, played, did their thing. That was where they took Christ with them.
So I think that
absolutely.
bringing people in during the Bible or share it with them. Is
Well, I love when you said the gospel, because a lot of people get a little nervous about that word, right? And you're just like, okay, the New Testament made it real easy. It's the good news of Jesus, right? Jesus brings the good news, which is his salvation from sin. So even describing the gospel to someone and talking about Jesus is not as difficult as you'd think, right? You just have to be able to hit those things, and you would be surprised that people go, I mean, I haven't heard anybody that says they didn't know he rose from the dead, but I've had people say, but I can't be forgiven of this. And then you're like, that's a part of the gospel, is to help them understand that there's nothing they've ever done that lets them, that they can't be saved from. So you never know what element of the good news is going to be the good news for them.
For sure.
Because they might have heard something or whatever. So I love that. The boldness to share the good news and the gospel is needed because you never know what somebody did or didn't hear before.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. A little bit better than a gap year. Brooke's gonna make her first step out of school and out of her quote unquote career path. I think is great, and to go with IMB is a phenomenal organization. North American Mission Board is part of that same thing, but they're the North American Mission Board versus the International Mission Board. But they do phenomenal work, and I really do. I think once you get through that process, and we'll share with the church and folks that love you and know you, and opportunities to assist in things that you might need before you go. But I'm excited for you. I'm really am. I'm excited that not only what God's doing in you, has done in you. Thank you for your willingness to share it, but also that fact that right now it's almost like when people give the kind of the gap year advice or the go backpacking or they give the advice of like, hey, you're not married, you're not whatever, you're when else are you going to be able to do this? But the reality is that even when Paul says, hey, things are different when you're married and have kids. Like there is an opportunity for you, and I'm glad you're seizing it. Yeah. Because once God sort of touches your heart for a people, especially for a people group and maybe of a country, maybe it's specifically. I mean, I didn't give you a chance to tell you this, but from the teaching aspect of things, like that's part of what you guys went and did is you would show up as the students. Yeah. You'd show up at the colleges as the students, and they would go practice their English, which is just, again, a crazy cool ministry door. They're all like, oh my gosh, the gringo, the gringo. I just went to Honduras. The gringos are here. What is it? The boulets. The boulets are here, and so you show up, and then they get to practice their English, and you're just like, but then that just opens doors. Yeah. Opens doors. So, I mean, I love the fact that even like you said, you're going to have, it's not that you're not going to be teaching. You just, you won't be teaching math necessarily, but no matter where you are, I think it's just cool to see. And I think you said that's a year program or a 2-year program. Yeah. Is it a 2-year that can be a 3-year?
2-year, you can add a 3-year, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you would just be praying for Brooke as she finishes her school year, plans whatever that next step is. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I love seeing our folks. I know I'm gonna do another one with Emily, who went on the world race. I've got some folks that just went to Honduras and Peru this year, and I love that our church is just continuing to be challenged. That it doesn't matter where, you don't have to go to Southeast Asia, you don't have to go to Peru, but there's benefits to doing it for sure. But at the end of the day, like you said, even when you come back, what are the things you learn? Well, I'm profiling this person, or I'm nervous about having all the answers and apologetics that I don't have, but you really are just a witness. Yeah. That's all you're called to do. Yeah. I've known Brooke since she was in kindergarten, and as she's growing up, she's just sharing that same faith that you've been learning your whole life and been putting to the test at school, putting to the test at UNC, and God's doing the work. So I just love that. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you again so much. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.